Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Moats. On today's episode, Luke's Jedi Academy is up and running on Yavin 4, but an ancient evil lurks in the Massassi temples, haunting the Academy students. Will Luke be able to vanquish the ghost from the Old Republic? Or will the Jedi Academy crumble before it really gets off the ground? We'll find out in today's book, Dark Apprentice by Kevin J. Anderson, the second book in the Jedi Academy trilogy. And joining me to talk about the book, it's Dan. Welcome back to the show, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well, Aaron. How are you?
Very good. Dan, as we said last episode, this is the first time you're reading this series. How are you enjoying it so far?
I have to say that I'm enjoying this book much more than the first installment. The pacing, the different points of view, I'm really digging into the story of everything, and it's nice to read this book series with you after the last year of the new Jedi Order, and seeing where characters not started, but they were at different points in their lives and their character arcs compared to the new Jedi series. So it's nice to kind of see the building blocks of, say, Kip Duran and the early relationships with Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker.
Well, I can't wait to talk about today's book with you today. But first, let's take some listener questions. We have 2 emails today. The first is from Will, who says, I've fallen behind on the podcast and just caught up to the episode where you read my email. Since then, I've gone on to graduate college and started my career in agriculture. Well, first off, Will, congratulations. I hope you're doing everything that you dreamed of doing when you got into college. Will's email continues. I recently read Hard Contact, and it was really good. I haven't had the chance to get another book yet, but I got one because I used to love playing the Star Wars Republic Commando video game. That being said, what is your favorite Star Wars game, if there is one? Well, thank you very much for the email, Will. Dan, I'm glad you're on the show today because you enjoy playing video games more than I do. Do you have a favorite Star Wars video game?
Honestly, Aaron, gun to my head, I'd have to go with Knights of the Old Republic, but I have played several. If anybody is old enough to remember the pod racing game from the 64, that's probably my earliest memory of playing a Star Wars game. There was the old Jedi Outcast games that were a lot of fun. Old Battlefront 1 and 2, playing on the PS2 or the Xbox, trying to get a LAN party set up and running through that with my buddies was a lot of fun. And then recently the Jedi Survivor Fallen Order series with Cal Kestis has been a lot of fun.
Will, I think I've maybe played 2 Star Wars video games very, very briefly. I remember when I was in middle school and high school, the computer lab at school had the original Dark Forces game. So I did play that once or twice in the computer lab. And on the Nintendo Switch, I got the Lego Star Wars saga from a couple years ago, mainly to play with my nephew. He does most of the playing. I kind of sit there with him and watch him play, and every once in a while he hands me the Switch when he changes characters to like R2 or something, and he lets me run around with R2. But that's pretty much my extensive knowledge of Star Wars video games.
Those Lego games are a lot of fun, and they are funny. I think the recent games they've incorporated voice acting, but the first ones they went off of hand gestures and different jokes without having to even say anything, which made it even funnier.
Dan, did you ever play the Republic Commando video game that Will mentions in his email?
I never owned it, but I remember having a sleepover with one of my buddies and just playing it through the night. But I never really got to sink my teeth into the game and really enjoy it.
Well, once again, Will, thank you very much for the email.
Today's second email comes from Dawson. Dawson says, "Big fan of the show. As someone who hasn't read a ton of Legends novels, I really enjoy hearing your thoughts, and I'm already building a to-read list. I have a few questions regarding the Yuuzhan Vong and the Rule of Two. First, how can the Vong blend in with the rest of the Galactic Society, as everything I have been told sounds like they stand out in the crowd? Mutilated, tattooed, disfigured, etc. I haven't read the new Jedi Order series, but remember you saying that Nom-Anor goes so far as to go before the Senate and no one asks where he's from and what species he is. Is this explained in the series? Second, how do the Jedi know about the Rule of Two in The Phantom Menace, since this was a decision made in secret by Darth Bane when he went into hiding? I haven't heard of any novels or comics or anything covering how it is that the Jedi learned about that, yet Yoda and Mace Windu seem to know about it when Darth Maul is destroyed."
Thank you very much for the email, Dawson. Your first question regarding how the Yuuzhan Vong can blend in with society, they have these living, or I don't know how to describe them, but they are called Uglith maskers, and they are like these living blobs, and the Yuuzhan Vong puts the masker on, and it makes the Vong look like the species that it wants to look like. So a Yuuzhan Vong wearing this Uglith masker, it actually sort of changes the way the Vong looks so they can look like a human. They can look like an Ithorian. They can look like a Rhodian. The only thing is that in general, Yuuzhan Vong are a little bit taller species. So while Nom-Anor can look like a human, he's going to look like a human that's probably 6'6", 6'7". He's going to be a little bit taller. Now, as to your second question about the Rule of Two in The Phantom Menace. When Darth Bane set up the Rule of Two, the story we get about that is from Legends. Remember, Legends is not the real story. As much as I love those books, and as much as I love Legends, the real story is what is created by George Lucas. That there were always two Sith, a master and an apprentice. So, if, according to Lucas, that's how it has always been, that's why Yoda, Mace Windu, and the Jedi Masters at least know of the Rule of Two. I think in Lucas's mind, Darth Bane decided to take the Sith into hiding. Previous to Darth Bane, the Sith were out there in the galaxy, the two. But Bane took them into hiding in order for the Sith to gain power without the Jedi's knowledge. That's the way I understand it. Thanks for the emails, Will and Dawson. If you have a question for the show, listener, you can email me at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a tweet at swlegendslounge. And if you'd like to get your voice on the show, just record a short message and email it in. But please record it in MP3 audio format. Coming up at the end of the show, I have a listener's Mount Rushmore to share with you. You'll want to stick around for that. But now, it's time for today's book, Dark Apprentice by Kevin J. Anderson. book number 2 in the Jedi Academy trilogy. Are you ready, Dan?
I am ready.
Well then, grab yourself a drink, and let's head in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge.
The story begins on planet Vortex. Leia and Admiral Ackbar arrive to negotiate the world's invitation into the New Republic and to hear the Concert of the Winds, open for the first time in decades, since before the reign of the Empire. Ackbar flies his personal B-Wing down through the strong winds of Vortex's atmosphere. But something goes wrong with the ship's autopilot, and the ship plunges toward the Cathedral of the Winds. Ackbar ejects Leia just before the B-Wing crashes into the cathedral, destroying the building and killing hundreds of Vors.
In the Cauldron Nebula, Imperial Admiral Natasi Dalla takes stock of the forces she lost at Kessel. In the Maul Cluster, Dalla commanded 4 Imperial Star Destroyers and more than 200 TIE fighters. But she lost 1/4 of her fleet when Han Solo and Qui Zooks used the Sun Crusher to tempt the captain of one of her Star Destroyers into flying too close to one of the cluster's black holes. Dalla is angry, and she decides to cause as much pain as she can against the New Republic. But after more than a decade hiding in the Maul Cluster, Dalla knows her forces need a little seasoning before they can inflict real damage on the Republic. She needs to start small. And after capturing a Republic supply ship and interrogating its captain, Dalla discovers the perfect target: a small, new colony of refugees on the planet Dantooine.
At the Jedi Academy on Yavin 4, Luke Skywalker meets his students. Luke shows them a lesson from a Jedi holocron, a warning from 4,000 years ago. Master Vodo Siosk Bosk talks about his apprentice, Exar Kun, and warns about the temptations of power. After the lesson, one of Luke's students, Gantoris, works alone in his room. Gantoris is haunted by visions of a dark man, a shadow who emerges from the walls and shows Gantoris how to build a lightsaber. The dark man says that Luke is holding Gantoris back from the feeling of the full power of the Force. But with his new lightsaber, Gantoris can now show the Jedi Master just how powerful he can be.
Following the disaster at the Cathedral of the Winds, Ackbar resigns his commission and retires to Mon Cal. Little does he or anyone else in the New Republic know, but the accident on Vortex wasn't Ackbar's fault. His friend and personal mechanic, Turpfin, sabotaged Ackbar's B-Wing. When the Empire enslaved thousands of Mon Calamari decades ago, Turpfin was taken to Karita, where part of his brain was removed and replaced with Imperial technology. Since then, the mechanic has done the bidding of Ambassador Fergan, the head of the Academy. Fergan originally hoped the crash would kill Leia and Ackbar, but the resulting turmoil works almost as well. With Ackbar slinking away to hide in disgrace, the New Republic now faces a public relations nightmare from the planets skeptical of the government.
Luke leads his students through a relaxation exercise, but Gantoris interrupts the lesson and demands the Jedi Master face him in lightsaber combat. When Luke asks Gantoris where he learned to build a lightsaber, the big man says that Luke is not the only teacher on Yavin 4. Gantoris attacks with a fury that surprises Luke, swinging his blade violently and forcing Luke to retreat. Luke fights off Gantoris for several minutes before the Jedi Master decides to end the contest. Luke uses one of the small jungle creatures to distract Gantoris and then uses the Force to pull his lightsaber away. Luke tells Gantoris that their duel was a good exercise, but the big man must do a better job of learning to control his anger.
Admiral Dalla and her forces arrive at Dantooine and discover the new colony of refugees from Eol Shah, the harsh, volcanic world where Luke discovered Gantoris. It's time for Dala's troops to get some true combat exercise. The Admiral orders stormtroopers and AT-ATs to the surface. Her orders? To wipe out the colonists. Take no prisoners. It's a massacre. The refugees have no defenses to face that kind of Imperial force. The fighting, if you can call it that, is over in moments. The refugees from E.L. Shaw are gone, and Dala starts to look for another Republic world to strike.
Luke is in the Great Temple's communications room, talking to Han, when Dorsk 81 bursts in. "Come quickly," the clone says. "Something is wrong." Luke races through the temple corridors, passing several of his students, their faces stunned. Luke sees Cam Solusar and Streen standing in the doorway to Gantoris' room. They allow the Jedi Master to enter. There on the floor, Luke sees the charred, blackened corpse of his first student. Gantoris' robes lay smoking, his skin and bones a pile of ash. Luke picks up Gantoris' lightsaber off the floor. He runs through a Jedi calming exercise, taking 3 deep breaths. With his students crowding around him, Luke turns. "Beware the dark side," he says.
On Coruscant, Leia is called to Mon Mothma's apartment. The Chief of State has made fewer and fewer public appearances lately, many times sending Leia in her place. When Leia enters the apartment, she finds Mon Mothma lying in a medical bed, a 21B droid monitoring her vitals. "I'm dying, Leia," Mon Mothma says. "It's some strange wasting disease. The doctors have never seen anything like it before." The Chief of State tells Leia she needs to bring Akbar back. Mon Mothma says that if she dies, and with Leia alone without allies, she fears the New Republic Senate could pull itself apart.
Wedge Antilles escorts Kip Duran to Yavin 4 to join Luke's Jedi Academy. They've also been tasked with getting rid of the Sun Crusher, the Imperial fighter capable of blowing up a star. The Sun Crusher's quantum armor makes it impossible to destroy, so the New Republic decides to send it into the depths of the gas giant Yavin. After Wedge and Kip set the ship's autopilot, they watch as it disappears into the planet's atmosphere. Wedge then flies Kip down to Luke's academy on Yavin 4. Luke feels the young man is very strong in the Force. Determined, Kip looks at Luke in the eyes. "I'm ready, Master Skywalker. Teach me the ways of the Force."
On Mon Cal, Leia tries to convince Akbar to come back, but the former New Republic Admiral refuses. He plans to help rebuild the Mon Cal cities that were damaged by the clone Emperor's world devastators a few years ago. Akbar gives Leia a tour of some of the damaged floating cities, when suddenly, turbo lasers rain down from the sky. It's Admiral Dala. While the Imperials pummel the floating cities, Akbar and Leia fly up to the orbital shipyard. Desperately, Akbar tries to organize a planetary defense. When he looks across the battlefield, Akbar notices that Dala is using an old tactic of Grand Moff Tarkin. Dala committed 2 Star Destroyers to the battle, but Akbar realizes the Imperials are holding a third one back, hidden behind Mon Cal's moon. Akbar takes remote control of an empty Mon Cal cruiser and flies it toward the moon, and right into the path of the emerging Star Destroyer. Admiral Dala tries to alert the captain of the Star Destroyer, but it's too late. The Mon Cal cruiser crashes into the Star Destroyer's underbelly, destroying it. Stunned, Dala calls the retreat, and the Imperial forces jump to hyperspace.
At the Jedi Academy, Kip Duran quickly surpasses the other students. His immense Force skills impress Luke and gain the respect of his peers. But something else takes notice of Kip's progress: the Dark Man. The Shadow visits Kip at night in his room. The Dark Man tells Kip that the Force is strong with him, but he says that Luke is holding Kip back from reaching his full potential. The Dark Man says that Kip could be even more powerful if he's willing to listen, to study the parts of the Force the Jedi refuse to teach. Kip asks the Shadow to train him, but first, Kip wants to know the Dark Man's name. I am the greatest Dark Lord of the Sith, the Shadow says. My name is Exar-Kun.
On the Imperial planet Kurita, Ambassador Fergan smiles. His Mon Calamari spy Turpin has new information. The location of Anoth, the secret planet where Han and Leia's youngest son Anakin is hidden. The baby is the grandchild of Darth Vader. If Fergan can capture him, he can mold the child into a new Imperial Emperor. And of course, that means that Fergan can control the Empire until young Anakin comes of age.
Exar-Kun begins teaching Kip the ways of the dark side of the Force. The power is intoxicating to Kip. Soon, he confronts Luke, accusing the Jedi Master of holding the students back. Kip says there are other aspects of the Force, things that can open up avenues to power. When Luke asks where Kip has learned some of the things he is saying, Kip runs off. Using his newfound power, Kip pulls the Sun Crusher out of the depths of the gas giant Yavin. It's time to strike back against the Empire, to get revenge for the death of Kip's parents and his brother.
Luke confronts Kip as the young man approaches the Sun Crusher. Kip, the Sun Crusher is too powerful of a weapon, Luke says. We must send it back. But Kip refuses, and again, he accuses Luke of trying to hold him back in the Force. Luke ignites his lightsaber. Please, Kip, don't make me fight you, he says. But Luke's blade flickers and dies. Suddenly, the Jedi Master feels cold, and a shadow falls across the ground. Meet my real master, Kip says, the Dark Lord, Exar-Kun. Kip blasts Luke with Force lightning, staggering the Jedi Master. Kip blasts Luke again and again. And soon, Exar-Kun's shadow lends his power. Icy black tendrils enwrap Luke. He tries to scream, but no noise comes out. Silently, the darkness consumes the Jedi Master, and Luke falls to the floor, unconscious.
The story ends in the Cauldron Nebula. Admiral Dala and the Imperials have returned to the nebula to lick their wounds and to plot an attack on Coruscant. But before they can launch, Kip Duran arrives in the Sun Crusher. Do you remember me? Kip asks. It's the Sun Crusher, Dala cries. Engage tractor beams. If we can capture it, we can destroy the rebellion. But before the Imperials can bring their tractor beams online, Kip launches 7 of the fighter's resonance torpedoes at the nebula's 7 stars. Run! Dala screams. Jump to hyperspace now! But it's too late. The torpedoes hit, and the stars explode, sending waves of annihilation and radiation through the nebula. Kip watches as the waves reach Dala's star destroyers and vaporize them. After the destruction, Kip sets a course to Kurita. It's time to get vengeance on the Imperials that took his brother.
Time to take a break. When we return, Dan and I will talk more about Dark Apprentice. I'm Aaron Moats. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Thank you for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, where we celebrate the books from Star Wars Legends. But allow me to recommend a book from Star Wars canon. Catalyst, a Rogue One novel, is the story of Galen Erso, Orson Krennic, and the construction of the first Death Star. It's a story of intrigue, betrayal, and how a friendship can be destroyed. An essential story leading up to Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Check out Catalyst, a Rogue One novel by James Luceno. Welcome back to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Motes, and today, Dan and I are talking about the second book in the Jedi Academy trilogy, Dark Apprentice by Kevin J. Anderson. Dan, at the beginning of the show, you said you really got into this book. What was it you liked about it?
I don't know. I can't really explain it, but I loved the flow from the different chapters and the different points of view between the story. I thought that things were more fleshed out, and to me, they just read better and weren't, I guess, quite as clunky as the first book.
I can see that. I think the first book maybe had too many storylines. If I remember correctly, I think it had like 4 or 5 different storylines going at the same time. This one, for the most part, has 3. And I think maybe they weave in and out together a little easier than the way the storylines interacted in the first book.
I agree. Yeah, that was a better way of explaining what I tried to say.
Well, the main storyline, obviously, is Luke's Academy and Exar Kun trying to influence Luke's students. Let's start with Gantoris. He allows Exar Kun to manipulate him and eventually discovers that in his quest for power, he's not ready for it, and he learns that lesson in the most tragic way.
It was definitely a one and done final lesson from Exar Kun, which is exactly what Exar wanted. Originally, when we were talking about the last book, you asked me who I thought the Dark Man was. I thought that it was Exar Kun, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember his name at the time. And then when I was reading through it, and the Holocron Jedi Master was talking about his disciple, Exar Kun, I actually fist bumped, just alone in my room, just, yeah, I was right. But yes, I was very excited about that. And after our last episode, before knowing that it was Exar Kun, I thought, well, maybe Gantoris's vision of the Dark Man might have been his self. And going into this book with no knowledge of any of the story beats or any of the, I guess, side characters, I thought, well, that would be a pretty neat turn of events, that he has been his whole life worried about the Dark Man, and then his pull to the dark side is what causes him to be that. But the reveal of Exar Kun was just fantastic for me.
After Exar Kun does away with Gantoris, Kip arrives, and Kip, it's described in the story, has more natural ability with the Force than any of the students Luke currently has at the Academy, except for maybe his 2-year-old niece and nephew.
Unfair advantage.
Sure. Exar Kun immediately starts trying to manipulate Kip into studying the dark side. In both instances, we see that Exar Kun tells Gantoris and Kip that they can become more powerful, that Luke is holding them back. What do you think Exar Kun's endgame is doing this? Why? What does he get out of the deal of trying to teach Gantoris and Kip Duran the ways of the dark side?
Well, for anyone who's not familiar with the character of Exar Kun, he was originally a Jedi, and there was a comic series. What was the name of the series? Was it the?
It was the old Tales of the Jedi series.
Yes, the old Tales of the Jedi series, and it went through the entire span, I guess, of Exar Kun, his fall from grace, all the way to him being trapped in the temple in Yavin 4, which something that I like about Legends is how much they cultivate history to these planets that in the movies we only get a snippet of. But to know that there's so much history on Yavin 4 is great. But enough with the rambling. To get back to your original question, I think he requires a vessel strong enough to free him from Yavin 4, because currently he's trapped. He's been trapped for 4,000 years, which is a testament to his strength in the dark side of the Force, that his spirit is able to have the resolve to remain for that long. But I think he tried with Gantoris, and the power burned Gantoris from the inside out, and now he is looking at Kip as a potential vessel.
I would ask, why not just choose Luke? Because we know how powerful with the Force he is. But logically, if you think about it, Exar Kun is going to want a novice, someone that he can mold into the Force user that he wants to be once he decides to possess that vessel.
Right. And in the story, something that we didn't go over, but in the story, he visits Luke in a dream disguised as his father. And it's Luke's resilience against the dark side that is able to save him from being twisted by Exar Kun's words. And I think maybe that's when Exar was... He really had Kip just fall into his lap as far as getting someone who is young and strong enough to handle his power, and then also malleable enough to twist their ambitions.
Gantoris's story ends in tragedy. Exar Kun has manipulated Kip to the point where Kip now wants to take revenge on the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
He starts by destroying the Cauldron Nebula and wiping out the rest of Admiral Dalla's fleet. Now he wants to go to Karita. With Luke falling at the end of this book, how can they stop Kip going forward?
I would have to hope that at some point they're going to try and get him to listen to reason. It may be helpful that Mara is in the picture. She may be able to speak to him in a way of from being a former dark side user, know what to say to him to talk him off the ledge. But the cynic in me thinks that it'll just be through the power of friendship. They will be able to, Kip will be able to see the light, and everything will be okay. Maybe the twins have a factor in it. Maybe they hold hands and they Care Bear love beam him.
Maybe. I guess we'll have to read the third book to find out. Let's talk about one or two other things in this story. One thing I completely skipped in the summary. It's one of the few things in Legends that I dislike, and that is 3PO and Chewbacca babysitting the twins, them running off down to the underbelly of Coruscant and somehow making their way back home. What did you think of that storyline? You're of the two of us, you're the one with children this age. So,
right.
What did you think of the storyline?
I got a kick out of it. And I mean, we know that you say all the time that Star Wars has stories for everyone, and
absolutely, it absolutely does.
Yeah, some stories might not work for some people, and then others might latch onto it and enjoy it. Anytime that the twins were on paper and they were just kicking 3PO's butt, I couldn't help but just giggle, because for some reason I picture my mother-in-law as 3PO trying to wrangle my two boys, and it would go about the same way. She's trying to be very, prim and proper and courteous, and my boys won't have any of that because they're 3, and thankfully they're not Force users.
Did you enjoy the continual use of the twins' favorite book, the Little Lost Bantha Cub, that showed up over and over again in the story?
I did. And after reading this book, I went on Google to see if there was a children's, Star Wars license, the Little Lost Bantha Cub nursery rhyme book. I went on to see if there was a way to purchase that book, and the fact that there isn't really surprised me. How they have Star Wars underwear and toothpaste, but not nursery rhyme books, just blows my mind.
They do have some small children books in Star Wars. I remember they had some of the Little Golden books that were Star Wars books.
Oh yeah, that's taking it back.
Yeah.
Well, I know that there are like children's books, but they made such a great nursery tale in I'll say canon in the storyline, and they've got an opportunity right there to start licensing things that are within the universe, just making books out of them.
See, this is one of the reasons why I enjoy having guests on. I enjoy when I find someone who likes something differently in Star Wars than I do. That you like something that just, if I were the editor of Kevin J. Anderson with this, I would be telling him to cut all of this out. For me, it seems like something that doesn't fit in the book. But for you, I guess it seems natural to be in this story. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Well, yeah. I enjoyed the Jason and Jaina storyline and all the interactions between 3PO, Chewbacca, and then even with Leia and Han, because as a parent, I guess I like seeing how, even if they are fictitious, I like seeing how other parents interact with their children. So to me, it was great character growth for for Han to read his twins a nursery rhyme so that they could fall asleep to it. To know that he doesn't have to be the rough, gruff smuggler. He allows himself to have those moments with his children. To me, that adds a lot of depth to his character.
Cool. Well, it's almost time to wrap up the show, but one of the things you listed in possible discussion topics, the last thing, the allure of the dark side and Legends lacks rules on using the dark side. Can you explain to me what you mean by that statement? Because it sounds intriguing, but I don't know exactly what you're asking.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, according to, I'm kind of going off of memory, so my memory might be failing me, but in canon, and according to Lucas, once you are drawn to the dark side, there isn't much coming back from it. Is that sort of correct in saying? Or is that how it should be?
No, you can come back from the dark side. You have to choose to not use it. The way he talks about the dark side is almost like a drug. That once you start using it, you're going to want to use it more and more and more. The only way back is for you to choose cold turkey. I am not going to use the dark side of the Force.
I see. Yeah. So then I was completely mistaken on the whole, as far as just the whole question. As far as you're saying that there isn't you can use it sometimes and then you can use the light sometimes. It's either you give into your anger or ambition and you use the power of the dark side, or you just flat out do not and you cut yourself off from it.
Well, it's not cutting yourself off. It's you choosing not to use it. You have to make the choice to be a better person.
I would be a dark side user, so I wouldn't. I don't think using either side makes you a good or bad person. Well, but I know now that goes against the purpose of using whichever side of the Force.
Sure. If you want to strip Star Wars down to its bare bones, it's a morality tale, and it's a very simplistic morality tale. There is a light side and a dark side that in order to be a good person, you have to choose to be a good person. In order to be a bad person, you have to choose to be a bad person. It's very simplistic in that. Now, the story can become complex, but the morality tale in Star Wars is very simplistic.
Right. And you can't be a good person while also using the dark side.
In Lucas's view,
right.
No. The ends do not justify the means.
Well, thanks for clearing that up.
Sure. And if any listener out there thinks that I'm wrong, tell me about it. I very well could be. This is just my opinion from listening to interviews with Lucas, from reading interviews with Lucas, and from what I've observed from the stories we have gotten from Lucasfilm. But if someone knows something else or believes something else, again, let me know. Well, Dan, it's just about time to wrap up the show. But first, I have a new Star Wars Mount Rushmore to share from listener Wes. And we get to hear from Wes himself. Wes, take it away.
Hey, Aaron, and hello to all my fellow Legends Lounge listeners. My name's Wes, and thanks, Aaron, for letting me send in this clip. Thank you so much also just for the show. It's one of the few things that I enjoy in general, that I look forward to, and especially when it comes to Star Wars. You know, we've just seen Disney screw it up so much, most recently with The Acolyte. What a mess that show is. So just being able to have something Star Wars-wise to look forward to is just really, really nice. We've been doing Mount Rushmore of like favorite Star Wars characters or authors. So I want to kind of take this in a different direction and do Mount Rushmore of favorite moments or scenes within Legends, or just things that kind of stand out to me. I will say as an honorable mention, and I didn't include it only because I'm just going through the series now, is in the New Jedi Order, which I just started Rebel Dream. I want to thank you and your co-hosts for covering that. You guys made me want to check out the series after I didn't enjoy it the first time around, and I'm so glad that I stuck with it. I'm really enjoying it, and Rebel Dream is awesome. I'm loving the tactics of it. This book is so awesome, and when they retake Borleas, that is like one of the coolest things I've ever read. So that whole sequence, I would say, would be an honorable mention for memorable moments. But the 4 moments that I was going to talk about today, firstly, comes from the Darth Bane trilogy, which again, I was introduced to because of your show. And that would be the lightsaber battle between Bane and Zana and the Jedi in the temple. Almost at the end of the book. For me, it was on par with Duel of the Fates. I could hear the music. I could hear the hum of the lightsaber and the blade colors as they clashed to one another. There was just something really powerful about it, and I loved it. It just really resonated with me. When I can read a book and it makes me sit up in my chair and my focus is completely on what I'm reading, which doesn't happen very often, for me, that is a good book. That is a good story. My second favorite would be from the Thrawn trilogy. Thrawn ends up having a cloaked vessel that he drops beneath the shield generator, and he coordinates an orbital bombardment between that ship and the Chimera. So it looks like the Chimera is attacking through the shield. And that is what I love about the OG Thrawn. It's just that cleverness, that brilliance of tactics. It's so simple. I'm 30 and I read the Thrawn trilogy when I was about 20. And I just remember just thinking, wow, this is so cool. And that was kind of where I really fell in love with Thrawn. So that moment had to make it in my list. Third is going to be from Shadow of the Empire. So you've mentioned, Aaron, that Vader is your favorite character. He's my second favorite. He's my second favorite, followed by Obi-Wan Kenobi. And specifically in that book, I love it when he destroys Prince Xizer's ship with the Executor. At least I believe it's the Executor. It was just so satisfying to see Vader finally show Prince Xizer who's boss. The only thing that would have been better is his own hallway scene that we got from Rogue One, except instead of killing rebels, it would be killing Black Sun Guards and then Prince Xizer. But, you know, whatever. It was still really satisfying for the time, and it just really stands out to me. The fourth and final one, and this might be kind of reaching into obscurity. I don't even know if you've read this or heard of this. So there's the Han Solo trilogy that you're covering later this year by A.C. Crispin. I'm curious when you cover it. I've read part of it before and it didn't really work for me. But there was a second Han Solo trilogy called The Adventures of Han Solo. That's a blast. I absolutely loved it. And in the third one, Han has like an old Western like draw duel with this gunslinger. He's kind of described as like this very fancy, suave, deadly Spaniard kind of. And Han loses the duel to Galandro. And I just remember going, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen. I won't spoil the rest of the book because you haven't covered it on the show. And if you ever do, I don't want to spoil it for listeners. But highly recommend the book. And really just that scene in particular was really cool. So thanks so much for letting me send this in. I look forward to your future episodes. And thanks for giving me something to look forward to.
Well, thank you very much for the Mount Rushmore there, Wes. Dan, I think you and I may disagree a little bit with one or two things that Wes said at the beginning of his Mount Rushmore segment there. But as far as his Mount Rushmores go, I know you probably really agree with the first one, the Bane, Zana lightsaber duel.
Absolutely. I agree with Wes completely. The pacing of that fight, the detail of the moves used between Bane and Zana, it was a very intricate fight, and the way that it was written made you feel like you were just watching it unfold right in front of you.
And you had the uncertainty as to who actually won.
Are you talking about the finger? Are we bringing up the finger twitch again? I'll talk about the finger twitch. I'm ready.
I'm just saying it. I like how Drew Karpyshyn leaves it. I won't say open-ended, because I definitively believe that Zana won the lightsaber duel with Bane. I believe she defeated Bane and became the Dark Lord of the Sith. But one of the aspects of the Rule of Two was that when the apprentice destroys the master, it's only after she gains all the knowledge that she can from the master, and in that way, the master lives on. Not that they actually live on, but their knowledge and everything they know about the Force live on through the apprentice. And for me, others can disagree, you can disagree. For me,
I do.
That's the significance of the hand twitch at the end of the fight.
And this is just from a Legends novice point of view. I think that if Zana was on par with Bane, but she hadn't learned everything that Bane could teach her because she didn't know about the swap. So in a way that still makes her an apprentice because she still had one more thing left to learn. I also think that because Bane, we'll say in Legends, he established the Rule of Two, I think that if Zana won, and then throughout time, that ideology of the Rule of Two, I don't know if it would have been preserved as strongly if you're going off of tribal knowledge from masters past. Like, maybe Zana truly believed in the Rule of Two, but I don't think that just passing that down from master apprentice, eventually I think that you would come into contact with somebody who didn't agree with it. But if Bane is still in charge, then that's how he is able to enforce it, because there's no one else to have a different opinion. He has been like the de facto Sith Lord throughout the entire time.
So you're saying that Palpatine was actually Darth Bane without knowing it?
I would like to think that Bane was Plagueis, and he made it all the way up to there, and then he wasn't able to. He underestimated Sidious's cunning and killed him in his sleep.
All right, well, it's a fun theory. It's a fun interesting theory. I think it's ridiculous, but it's a very fun theory.
There's at least two other people that have maybe the same idea worldwide.
Sure.
Nobody
Sure.
that I know.
I'm sure they're out there. If you're one of those two, let us know. Please let us know. As far as Wes's other moments in Legends that are on his Mount Rushmore, yes, Wes, I have read the Han Solo Adventures. I have read The Lost Legacy, and I remember most of the shootout with Galandro. It's been quite a while since I've read it, but I remember most of it. It's a really cool scene. A lot of Star Wars fans that are about 10 years older than me, I'm 46 right now, but I'm talking those that are in their 50s into their 60s, most Legends fans that age will tell you that the Han Solo Adventures are their favorite stories in Legends. And we'll be covering them coming up next year. So you won't have long to wait.
I would like to say that for this being a Mount Rushmore, I'm trying to picture what the moments would look like on the side of a mountain.
I believe it's a metaphor. It's a metaphorical Mount Rushmore.
Oh no, I'm going literal. Do we have holograms, or do we have just the most iconic moment carved into the stone?
I'd go with holograms. I want to see movement. I want to see actual movement.
For sure.
Thanks again for sharing your Mount Rushmore, Wes. Listener, if you have a Star Wars character grouping that you'd like to share with me, send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com, or send me a tweet at swlegendslounge. Or, like Wes, you can record yourself and email it in. But please record it in MP3 format. Dan, it's time to go. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Hey, Aaron. Thank you for having me again.
We're 2/3 of the way through the Jedi Academy trilogy. How much are you looking forward to finishing the series?
After this book, I'm very much looking forward to the conclusion. I hope that they are able to stick the landing.
Well, coming up the next episode of the Star Wars Legends Lounge, we'll see if they stick the landing, because it's the final book in the Jedi Academy trilogy, Champions of the Force, by Kevin J. Anderson. You can look forward to that episode coming up on July 26th. Thank you so much for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. I'm Aaron Motes. May the Force be with you. And remember, there's always a bit of truth in Legends.